two teachers going for promotion. Both hate job interviews.
The last interview was a disaster.
Sometimes I get lost as to exactly what they want from me.
We put them through a mock interview.
How important is it that middle leaders act as role models?
Give them expert coaching.
It sounds a bit more like a leader would express that.
And see if they can improve their performance. To help conquer their fear of the job interview, two teachers at Oaks Park High School will be facing an interview panel for a middle leader position. First up is science teacher Colin Douglas.
What's the gas involved in respiration? What gas do we need in order to respire? Yeah.
He's determined to become a head of year and was interviewed for a similar post 3 months ago.
The last interview was a disaster. Nerves really took the better of me, and basically, no matter what question I was asked, I babbled back the same answer. And so I'm determined that the next time an opportunity arises that I must get the post. I can't even possibly deal with failure again.
Monstrous aliens, spaceships, appear in the sky and drift overhead before slowly landing.
The second candidate is maths teacher Raj Jutli. The head of department is leaving next year, and Raj wants his job.
I get very nervous in interviews. It's the questions which are unexpected that throw me a little bit, trying to understand exactly what they're looking for. I find very difficult. Sometimes I get lost as to exactly what they want from me.
Today the post is fictitious, but the panel is very real. Head teacher Steve Wilkes, who's interviewed over 700 candidates in his time, and his deputy, Kevin Wire.
From very early on, even maybe the first 30 seconds and the first handshake, you are picking up indications from them that will ultimately help you form a judgment. And probably, whilst you can't gain the job in the first 30 seconds, you can begin to lose the job in the first 30 seconds.
I think what we are looking for is someone who's going to work within an area and be capable of leading within that area and inspire their colleagues.
The interviews will be observed by professional development coach Lee McAuliffe.
Some candidates let themselves down for a variety of reasons. So it may be nerves, which means that they either speak too quickly or they don't tell the panel enough. It may be also that they're unprepared and don't actually know about the role or, more importantly, the school to which they've applied.
First in is Colin.
Colin, Steve Wilkes, head teacher.
Kevin Wire, deputy head. Hi, Colin.
Welcome to Oaks Park. Okay. So if you could start off really with your presentation about your educational philosophy and values.
Okay, well, my main philosophy and values comes kind of in two parts. The first being really from what I've seen in Oaks Park, which is learning together and achieving together. And then the second one, which is something that I've had through my school life and through my home life as well, which is learning today for living, learning today for living tomorrow. And I think they're two very powerful things in that we're preparing students for the future and we're trying to recognise achievement as they go through the school. In addition to that, I'm also trying to encourage them to build, and they have done now, they're in year 10, trying to get them to build relationships within the class. In addition to that...
Can I jump in there and just say that's fine for time now? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Could you perhaps give me an example of something that you've done within school that's really very much down to you as an individual, and then perhaps another example of where you've been working effectively as a team?
As an individual, I've provided trips for La Reserve, which is to south of France for Water Sports Week, and also to Glaisbury, which is an outdoor education centre in Wales. These are things that I, as a Key Stage 3 coordinator, I, along with the rest of the staff, have put together schemes of work, have made sure that the curriculum is running. It's a totally different curriculum to when I first started here. The curriculum was running, so I, in and amongst the team, was working on making sure that project or their lessons are now not stopping this year at low from going, keeping them engaged throughout, and really together we're achieving this, and Key Stage 3 is now running quite successfully in my opinion.
Okay, thank you very much. Kevin?
Okay, thank you. A member of staff that you line manage has not met any of their performance management objectives. How do you approach their next cycle?
Again, I don't like to act too soon, but why haven't they met this? Is this because they're refusing to cooperate and they're refusing to act on good practice. And also I'd be asking myself, well, if they haven't met these targets, why has it got this far? Why have I let that go as far as the end of the review cycle? Because I would expect that a system is not this kind of, well, you know, you're not getting your targets, we're going to try and, you know, give you a hard time, try and coach them and try and bring them to me and try and show them positive and good practice.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Colin. Nice to meet you.
Bye.
Now the feedback.
I felt that where he would need to do quite a lot of his work would be on the 2-minute presentation, because I felt that he just sort of went into a dialogue there and he wasn't sharp enough and it wasn't focused enough.
What I'm sensing as well from his answers is just a lack of structure per se. Because at one point I sort of thought, and I've written, and where are the full stops when he speaks, really? Because one blends into another, and actually what he may be saying is very pertinent, but there's no structure that leaves it memorable in your minds, is there?
But there were times when he actually answered the question, and he'd answered it very well, and he still went on and over-egged the pudding, and then still kept going. He doesn't like silences, does he? He fills that space up with chatter.
Yeah. It was interesting, there was one time where he paused for probably about 2 or 3 seconds, which, again, to him probably just feel like half a minute, but actually the quality of his answer after he paused was much better.
Hello.
Now it's Raj's turn.
Hi Raj, Steve Wilkes.
Oh, right. I was kidding mine.
First, her presentation.
I aim to bring an open mind and a positive attitude and high expectations to the classroom each day. I believe that I owe it to my students as well as the community to bring consistency, diligence and warmth to the job. Trust between a teacher and a student is very, very important if a teacher is going to maximise the student's potential.
10 seconds.
Okay. I would like to want a little bit more, but I know I'm running out of time. But yeah, I think a well-rounded person, I think that's what I'm trying to get at, and also the fact that if you believe in a child, they'll rise to the occasion as well.
If you could give me 2 examples, the first one being of a piece of work that has really been your own, and then secondly, an example of something where you've really worked as part of an effective team.
Okay, the first thing is what's my own. I'd say the booster classes, the booster programme which I ran last year for students who were on the D grade moving up to the C grade. I was the one who put all of that together. I was the one who initiated the programme, put a hell of a lot of effort into it. Group work, the one thing that I would say that I particularly, can I particularly say one thing? I think, could you ask me that second part, Kate?
Well, just something you particularly... SMT is planning to introduce an initiative that you don't agree with. You have to implement the initiative with the members of your team and gain their compliance. How do you go about doing that?
The idea has obviously come from SMT, but I'd not only take that idea, I'd try and manipulate it, but not manipulate it as such, but try and keep it what you're asking, but trying to put it into a way that will work for my department. And then, obviously, because I believe in it, and then I'll sell it to the rest of the department.
Okay, thank you. If you were to be successful today, what would you hope to achieve in your first 3 months in post?
I'd say the first 3 months would be more of a settling in period. I wouldn't want to rock the boat as such. Initially, I'd say for the 3 months, I'd let everybody get used to my way of leading. And then after the 3 months' time, maybe a little bit longer, maybe it's not just 3 months period, maybe after half of a year, start looking at what I can do, getting the team on board, making sure everybody's happy with what's happening, because I think that's very important, because it has been such a stable department for such a long time.
Okay, that concludes this part of it. Thank you very much.
I just think that her nerves kicked in big time, and she ended up, even more so than Colin, rambling.
Her language began to change, interestingly, and I felt it just became very informal and almost inappropriate at times for an interview. So we had phrases like, I wouldn't want to rock the boat, I'm on the case, I've asked this question before, I totally messed it up. And there was just a shift there.
The question about what would you hope to achieve in the first 3 months I thought was really interesting, because by the time she finished answering it, she'd stretched out 3 months to the first 6 months.
Yeah, she wanted more
so
time.
she'd bought more time. Yes. You got the sense she was saying, I'm not going to impose a leadership style on them, but that first 3 months would be spent with them getting used to my way of leading. And I then put in brackets here, by not leading, question mark. She used words like manipulate, subvert, and I'm wondering how comfortable I would actually feel in terms of her going away as a team leader and not doing our bidding, but actually backing us up. I think she provided an excellent example as to why you don't take a written set of notes into a presentation, because under times of pressure, you resort to reading it.
I sometimes think an interview is almost like going on a blind date in terms of you're both working out, do we want to see each other again?
Absolutely. After the feedback, each candidate has 1 hour of coaching with Lee. Colin is worried about his tendency to waffle.
The curriculum is running. It's a totally different curriculum to when I first started here. The curriculum is running.
If we think about one of the questions that you were asked, and then what we'll do is we'll map out, I'll get you to map out your answer, and then we'll just think about getting rid of any of the waffle and making sure that in that answer that you're selling yourself. The wording they asked you exactly was give examples of work that you've done as an individual and where you've needed to work as part of a team.
Yeah.
So perhaps if we take then two separate sheets, and then, as I say, either note on those or with the post-its, what your answer would ideally be.
Colin cuts the waffle and highlights only key aspects of his work in a team.
And interesting how you've shown that, in a sense, almost putting them as bullet points, which is something the interview panel said, almost to present as bullet points.
Progression meant that the team had to meet regularly. The projects had to be in increasing demand as we went through the year. And then the schemes of work had to be in some respect consistent.
So as a result of these activities, what was the actual impact?
By the end of the academic year, Year 7 levels were up.
Brilliant. So that's already something that you're able to think, right, in readiness for an interview, then you will be gemmed up on the impact of what you've done.
Colin tackles the other part of the question, what he's done as an individual.
If I were planning in that, I had to plan ahead and I had to make sure that ends were going to meet.
Are there any differences to the things you've pulled out there as opposed to here?
These seem to be more based on a leader, whereas this seems to be more based on a team player.
Interesting, isn't it?
That's what it should have been, really.
Just sort of that tweak that you've just begun to make, which is something the interview panel said, just keep the leadership role to the fore. So
Colin also wants help with his nerves.
Even making my way to the interview,
okay.
I feel that I can feel that the pulse is up and I'm just panicking, and then by the time I get to the interview, I've usually lost all control.
What I'm going to ask you to do, sort of first of all, is to think about a time when the nerves aren't there at all, so a time when you do feel very confident, very relaxed, very in control. I'm going to ask you to sort of visualise that now. And then what I'm going to ask you to do is just to sort of put your thumb and then your middle finger together and just press them together when you've got that picture, and I'll take you through that again. So if you see what you saw and hear what you heard, and then feel what you felt, and then just really push them together, and then let go. And you sort of lock it in there, and it means that then when we're on that walk to the interview room that we're going to sort of practice in a second, you're able to almost sort of press the switch. And then you're able to go in with that in your mind, rather than your head just being full of, I feel nervous, I feel really worried. Are you happy to sort of share what that experience was?
The experience was in the job, and it was in teaching, and it was actually in my classroom.
Right, okay.
And it was the students, and I knew that they were learning, and I knew that they were understanding physics. And I felt very happy that they were progressing, and I felt confident in myself because of the way I delivered it to them, and then they had progressed.
And get that feeling of confidence.
Reliving his experience in the classroom, Colin imagines he's walking to the interview.
And then if you just want to walk forward a bit longer, see, you've got that, talk me through what you're saying to yourself now.
I'm going to do everything I can. I'm going to do my very, very best.
Yep.
And I really want the job.
How did that feel?
Much better. Much better, actually.
Now it's Raj's turn. The panel was worried about her choice of language.
Put a hell of a lot of effort into it.
I noted down a few of the phrases that you use, which, as it's coaching, I'm not judging you on. I'm just going to put them to you. And then what I thought we could do is literally reframe them. You were talking about something you'd done, and you'd say, I'd let them know I'm on the case.
Okay.
So do you want to just write that down, please? So I'm on the case. Think about a colleague who's a leader within the school, who you respect, who deals with things very effectively and uses the language that you want to use. What would they say?
Looking into it...
would that feel better for you?
It feels better than dealing with it.
Okay,
Seriously.
yeah. A hell of a lot of effort into it. What did you want the interview panel to know at that point about that issue?
A lot of time and effort went into the project.
Okay. Yeah, that feels better for you. Brilliant. Let's pop that down then. What we're doing is just beginning this process of thinking through perhaps some of the phrases you're using and then tweaking them so that they sound more like the leadership role that you're applying for.
That seems very crass sort of thing. Okay. It seems very much someone not of leadership quality as such.
Okay.
In her presentation, Raj resorted to reading her notes. What could she do instead?
I suppose bullet points, a few points on a page is obviously a lot easier to get back onto track rather than the whole sentences.
Raj often misunderstood the question.
Could you ask me that second part again?
Well, you mentioned about sometimes needing to check in what the question was, and you found that you were answering a different question and then you had to go back. In future you will what then? Next time I will...
Clarify what the question is.
How are you going to clarify that with me as the interviewer?
Would you mind rephrasing it? Sorry, do you mind saying that again? Do you mind saying that again?
So we got rid of the sorry, so it sounds a bit negative. Any other tweaks about do you mind?
Can you?
Yeah.
Can you say that again?
Does that feel less negative for you now?
It makes me feel more confident.
Great. Okay.
And then there was the question about what she'd do in the first 3 months as head of department.
3 months' time, maybe a little bit longer, maybe it's not just 3 months period.
And at one point you seemed to suggest you were tweaking the question in terms of then actually it's 6 months. Could you imagine some of the questions, queries, concerns that might be arising in the head's or the deputy head's mind as you mentioned just that?
When I become head of department, nothing's going to happen. You know, I've got no agenda in mind.
What could you say in addition to what you've just said, or you might want to take bits out? Just work with that now.
Within the first 3 months, I'd want to try and get everybody comfortable with my leadership, the way I want to lead, you know, the way I lead. But in my mind, I have a vision for the future, and this is where I want the department to go. But obviously, they can't read my mind.
Not quite.
For the last 2 weeks, Colin has been working on the strategies Lee gave him.
So I found the coaching session most useful. It's just really helped me to be able to think about how to answer a question properly without remembering reams and reams of text. I'm hoping that the sequences that I got from the coach, that they'll help me to be more calm and settled as I walk in. I have practiced that, and hopefully it will show that up. So I'm hoping that, you know, what I've practiced at home will actually come into play tomorrow, and it'll really help the situation.
The coaching session was brilliant. Got so much out of it. I've been a lot more aware of myself in terms of the way I speak, the way I come across, my language. I've been very careful about, you know, what sort of language I use. If I want to become head of department, then I need to believe that I can become and act like I can. I'm happy, a lot more happy about going into the scenario than I was before.
Back at Oaks Park, it's the day of the second interview. The panel will get to see if the candidates have upped their game. Steve and Kevin are joined by Year 11 student Ross. Meanwhile, Colin and Raj are psyching themselves up.
I'm walking towards the interview now, I'm feeling calm. I'm thinking about when the students were understanding this tough concept in physics. They were all be able to understand it and they were able to grasp the concept by the end of the lesson.
I want to be myself, I want to be confident, I want to be the person I am in front of my classes and let them know what you're capable of.
I'm approaching the interview door now and thinking this is going to go very well. I'm going to get this job. I'm going to do my very best. I'm feeling confident.
Colin starts his 2-minute presentation.
Firstly, I'd like to say that I'm very passionate about the role. I've taken on additional responsibilities such as the Year 10 Gold Pathway students. Again, helping those students to really set their own targets in performance review day and monitoring and helping them to achieve the best that they possibly can.
What would you say is the difference between leadership and management?
Okay, well, management, as it comes across, is very much ticking boxes and making sure everything is happening as it should be. Leadership is having an ethos about how I want things to work and leading your team and guiding your team and helping your team to work towards the common goal.
What will you do for the students in your subject area that would make students like us want to support your claim to this job?
I think it can offer the students, firstly and foremostly, passion. As a classroom teacher, I want the best for my students. As a key stage coordinator, I want the best for the students, and I really would want to demonstrate to the students that I'm there for them and I'm there to support them. So making them buy into that ethos, really by explaining it fully and making sure they're aware of where I'm coming from and what I expect.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well done. Thank you.
I think my answers were certainly better. I took that pause before I answered the question, and then also I stopped before I started to completely repeat myself continually. On the way down, I was able to settle my nerves a lot more, even though at times I felt more nervous in the lead up, but actually whenever I walked into the room, I felt a lot calmer than I ever have.
Now it's Raj's turn. Her presentation went very wrong last time.
A head of department role is a key role in the school, not only for the success of the school, but raising standards of the students. A head of department needs to have a mission, they have to have a direction, and they have to have motivation, all of which I have. I'm also very, very passionate about my job. I love my job. I love developing initiatives. I love seeing success. And I just want to finish off by saying that I'm really eager and excited about taking the next step into my career.
Okay, thank you very much. What would you say is the biggest challenge for middle managers as firstly individuals and secondly as team leaders?
Could you repeat that?
Yeah,
please?
sorry. What would you see as the biggest challenge for middle managers? So if you were appointed, firstly to you as an individual and then secondly as being a leader of a team.
I think it's very important for a middle leader to have a direction, to have a vision of where they want the department to go. I suppose the challenge would be to know exactly where that direction is, to have a very clear vision and, again, to communicate it across to the department.
If you were successful today, what would you do to develop your team of staff?
It's really important, I think. It's really important to be positive. It's really important to praise people when they do something good and, you know, give the opportunity for people in my department to take on responsibilities, give them give them a purpose, not only as a class teacher, but develop them professionally as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Raj. Well done.
I was very conscious of my speech, so I'm hoping that that came across. I think my 2-minute presentation was better. I had my notes on paper, but I didn't need to look at them because I did practice a lot more.
So what's the panel's verdict?
First of all, I'd like to say that we felt you both made significant improvements. If I could outline the main points, first of all, Colin, and I think one of the big improvements I felt in your performance this time was that your answers were a lot more concise and you'd really thought more carefully about the questions. I think during the first interview we had a couple of weeks ago, we felt that you talked for a long period of time, and perhaps at the end of it I'd really lost what the question was about. I think if I look down my pad this time, I see, you know, very clearly you still managed to bring through your answers what I think you're all about, and that's passion, enthusiasm and commitment.
You know, you both were able to be yourselves much more today. The other big difference I thought, though, was you came in today expecting to not let yourself down. There was a much more clearly seen, from my perspective, way in which today you were managing that anxiety, because you didn't let yourself down. You know, some really, really good answers, and when you'd answered them, you shut up at that point, rather than answered it again, and in some cases a third time as well. So it's really good.
Can I move on to Raj? If you're looking in terms of improvement, I think you made a big leap between the 2 weeks. It was very thoughtful. The language was much better, although I felt you started off with a term that I wouldn't use in an interview when you talked about you guys.
Yes,
yeah.
I knew it. As soon as I said it, I knew it, yeah.
Also, you brought the notes in, and last time it was like, you know, boom, there are the notes, I'm reading the notes. You weren't reading the notes this time, they were just there, and you talked through your presentation, and again, had lots and lots of good ideas.
So a massive improvement really for both of you, but particularly you, Raj, I thought.
I've learnt a lot. I still have to learn more, but I actually went in there, I knew what I was doing wrong, whereas before I didn't.
Well, it's been an excellent experience. I feel more confident going into interviews. As Raj has been saying, I still think that there's a way to go. There's still a learning curve, but this is, I think we're a good way along it, and just bring on the next interview, really.
For Lee McAuliffe's top tips on interview techniques, go to the Teachers TV website.